What is going on, everybody? It's Joe back again with another video from Salty Roots. What I want to show you today is how I created a DIY auto top-off container. We are back from our vacation. In preparation for that vacation, I wanted to make sure all of my tanks were auto topped off so that none of my friends or family members had to lug around jugs of water. And so pretty simple design. I think anyone should easily be able to do this for relatively cheap. And I think they're pretty reliable with this gravity fed system that I built. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and follow along. I run a couple of styles of ATOs. On the Red Sea Reefer 350, I have this JBJ ATO. It's a relatively cheap product, and with that, it does fail from time to time. It's not my favorite piece of equipment. It works for the most part, but essentially what you have is, of course, a power source here that runs over to really any size pump that you would like, and then you have a couple of sensors. I have them here and here. One of them is going to detect when the water is too low, and the other one is going to detect if the water gets too high and make sure that it shuts it off. I don't have them set up that way. I was actually trying to get them both set up to detect when the water is too low because one failed quite often, and I don't think you can really do that anyway. So they're meant to, again, sense when the water is too low, and then it will have that pump fill it back up, or since ideally this would be up here on this higher notch, and then if it hits that, it'll make sure it cuts it off so it doesn't overflow. And that's the JBJ model. And like I said, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it does work for the most part. It gets the job done. I have the power cord running back through that mess of wires to a pretty simple 5-gallon bucket here. And then inside the bucket, I have my pump. Pretty straightforward concept on that one. This Red Sea Reefer actually, for the sump, it came with a gravity auto top off. And how that works is the tank essentially will sit right here. That's why this extra glass is in here. That small tank will sit there, but that took up too much room. I wasn't able to get, these dosing lines and just various cords and stuff where I wanted them. So that tank didn't work out for me in that spot. So instead, I went ahead and added it to the 125. Just built a small little stand for it. Same way I built my aquarium stands. And as you can see, it's pretty small. But this is where I actually use the gravity fed auto top off for the first time. This tank was actually built so that it has, you can't really see it, but it has a hole down in that corner. You can see there you have your valve that you can open or close, and that runs down to a float valve. And so very basic concept. Essentially that tube's going to fill up with water at all times as long as you have your valve open. And then, so I removed some water from my return chamber so that you can see the valve not floating and the gravity feeding the water to fill it back up. So then, once it gets to a certain point, the float valve will go up and it'll stop dispersing water. I actually had to modify this clip a little bit because it couldn't, what came with the float valve couldn't fit over this rim here. So what I actually did was just took a small magnet cleaner and I super glued a piece of acrylic, just a small piece, across the back of this magnet that was thin enough that this could slide over, as you see, and then just use the other side of the magnet cleaner. It's pretty advantageous because I can obviously move the magnet up and down as well to set the level of the float valve. I really like this style of float valve, and I'll put a link in the description. I get them on Amazon, and the best part about these float valves is, one, they're reliable, but two, this spot here where it connects is actually plastic, and most of them will actually have a metal screw there, which of course is going to rust over time. So I really like these ones because they're cheap, they work, and there's no metal to rust.
So in the last couple of days before we left for that trip up north, I was scrambling on just everything in this fish room. Just wanted to make sure that there really wasn't any work that needs to be done while I was gone that couldn't easily be done by a family member or a friend. And so I thought I had checked all the boxes, but then at the last minute, I realized I didn't have an auto top off for this tank. And so again, I was kind of scrambling, needed to put something together very fast. And so because I like the auto top off system so much on the 125 that gravity fed, I immediately knew I wanted to do something like that. Didn't seem overly complicated, just had to get over the hurdle of the pre-drilled hole in that smaller glass auto top off tank. But pretty quickly realized I could, just drill a similar hole in something plastic and use a bulkhead. So that's what we did, and what led to the design of this DIY auto top off tank. Okay, so as I had said, I was in a huge rush when I was trying to get everything ready for our trip, and I actually forgot to film the simple steps to build this DIY auto top off. So I went to the store and got like $1 container. Obviously, for this example only, you would not want to use something so small for an auto top off, but this is just for example, and it's a good reminder to get a lid as well, just to minimize any evaporation. That certainly will help. So like I had said, make sure you find something that does have a flat surface if you're going to use a regular bulkhead. And if you have a flat surface, you can kind of drill it on any side that you'd like. I'm going to choose to use this since it has the biggest area to drill on such a small container for our example. So get your container ready. Pick out your drill bit that you want to use. All right, so when you go to select the drill bit, of course, just make sure, take your bulkhead and make sure that it's going to fit. You don't want it too big, you don't want it too loose, and that's going to vary from bulkhead to bulkhead. So I'm using this drill bit here. Happens to be a diamond drill bit that I have for drilling tanks, but it's going to fit this bulkhead well. So this is one of the harder parts, is to get the hole started on plastic. Now with something so thin, you just want to make sure that you're going slow, just like glass. You don't want to bust the plastic. So just take it easy, drill it slowly on the spot you'd like. Make sure you line up your bulkhead where it's going to go on the container. You don't want it too low, you don't want it too high. You want it lower because of the fact that it's going to be gravity fed, right? As the water goes down, if you put it up too high, you're not going to get to use any of the water down below the bulkhead. So as low as you can, while it still is going to fit in there snug. I always recommend doing a marker where you decide the bulkhead's going to go. So I think right about there should do. And then, like I had said, this is a little difficult to get your hole started. Just gotta have some patience. You may have some scratches on your container, but the bulkhead will likely cover those scratches once you get it on. So go ahead and drill the hole where you made your mark. I typically like to start the drill first and then kind of go in, as opposed to putting it against the container and letting it spin. You're almost guaranteed then to slide off and put some big scratches. So I like to start the drill first. Once you get a groove and you can feel it kind of catching, you can apply a little bit more pressure. Just like drilling an aquarium, a glass tank, you want to try to apply even pressure as much as you can. So you now have your hole. And with this plastic, I definitely recommend taking a piece of sandpaper and getting rid of these burrs and making it nice, as clean and smooth as you possibly can. So just get a piece of sandpaper. Like I said, just kind of work your way around the hole, making sure you're getting rid of as many of the burrs as you can. Look on the inside. Sometimes you'll get, pieces of plastic that you want to pull out, but just trying to make sure that you have a nice clean hole to minimize any leaking. You may get some scratches here as you're, working the sandpaper around. Just try to keep it, close to the hole, and then the bulkhead will cover that. So once you have your hole drilled, make sure, this is key, at least for this style of ATO, you want to make sure that the bulkhead you choose is threaded on the inside. All bulkheads are going to have a thread on the outside. A lot of them are going to be slip on the inside. Make sure that the bulkhead you choose for this build, again, is threaded on the inside. So always remember, keep your gasket on the wet side. Go ahead and push that through your hole. Tighten it up as normal. Create a nice seal. And it's about as simple as it gets for the actual container. Now here's one of the key parts of this build, are these pieces here. So these are the barbed fittings that I used. I got them at Menards. They're very cheap, $1 or less for each of them. For this build, I do recommend getting a right angle or a 90-degree barb, but this is why you needed that bulkhead to be threaded, because you're gonna screw on one of these barb fittings. You wanna make sure that this width that you choose fits the tubing you're going to use for both this barb as well as the end of the float valve at the tank. So just make sure you're testing that out before you install it. And then, you know, I recommend bringing your bulkhead that you're going to use directly to the hardware store. That way you can make sure you pick the right thickness or the right size of barb fitting. All right, so to be honest, there's really not a whole lot to show. It is a very simple design, which is why I like it so much and think anyone watching this should be able to replicate fairly easily. So yeah, as you can see, I have my bulkhead drilled here towards the bottom with enough room to be able to get the nut on there all the way without it hanging off the bottom. And then I have this threaded bulkhead with this key piece here, and I'll also put a link in the description for this piece here that then threads into the inside of the threaded bulkhead. And this piece has a barbed fitting on the end that you attach your hose to, run it straight down to the float valve, and that's it. So I have the tubing running off of that bulkhead down into my mini little sump here. And on this particular design, I did have a baffle that I could fit that clip over, and so I didn't have to do the magnet trick, that cleaner magnet trick that I used on the 125. This just fit nicely right on that baffle. And on this tank, in terms of why I didn't just hook it to a baffle as well, it all depends on the size of your baffles, how tall they are. In this particular sump, the baffles are quite low, and I wanted the float valve to be up higher than that, and so I wasn't able to use that baffle, which is why, again, I had to create something like I did with the magnet float to hook the float valve to.
As always, thank you so much for stopping by and checking out another video. Hopefully these are helpful for you with some of these DIY projects I like to do. I am going to try to get back onto a weekly video cadence now that we are back from that trip. And I'm excited to show you kind of some of the next things on the project list. We need to get you know, some of these tanks stocked. It was fun getting them up and running, but now they're just kind of empty. So excited to bring you along to any of the fish stores I go to, show you kind of what I decide to do with each of the tanks. The 125 is doing really well right now. I did move over all of the softies and LPS from the Red Sea Reefer 350 to that tank, and so it's looking pretty good, but now the Red Sea Reefer looks empty. So again, just excited to bring you along you know, on this reefing journey. As all of you have seen throughout these videos, I am by no means an expert. I make a lot of mistakes, but you know, be successful faster is the tagline, it's the mission, right? If anything, come to this channel and just watch all of my mistakes so you don't have to go through them. So I'm happy to share all the things that go wrong, you know, for me. Like I said, and keep saying, happy to show you how I choose to tackle those challenges. It's not always the right way or the best way, but it's, you know, hopefully helpful for all of you. So make sure you comment, like, subscribe, share, all those great things, and we will see you in the next video.